Morning, colleagues, and welcome to another formal meeting of the Cabinet. And we will be considering a number of papers this morning, as listed in the agenda pack. Before I jump onto the agenda items, I just wanted to formally note for record and for prosperity our absolute congratulations to all the teams that provided such a stunning victory for West Ham and the West Ham fan community, but also to Newham. As you all know, there will be a victory parade taking place later this evening, 7 o'clock. The meet point or the kick-off point be at the champion statue at the end of Green Street, intersecting with Barking Road, and it will flow a prescribed route as organised in coordination with the London Borough of Newham, West Ham Football Club, the police and TfL, ending at the Old Town Hall in Stratford. And I would encourage as many members of the public, members of the council and officer staff team, and obviously the media, to come and enjoy the celebrations of crowds and fans jubilant in its victory last night. And if we can all pay our thanks and appreciation to the West Ham players and David Moyes, and especially to the two players that scored those winning phenomenal goals last night in Prague over at the Eden Arena. We're now going to be jumping into apologies for absence. Joy, can I receive any formal apologies for absence that have been received?
No, Chair, I've not received any.
Okay, fine. Are there any apologies that I need to know from any members of the Cabinet that wish to flag any colleagues from the wider executive that are not here?
Councillor Darwood.
Okay, Councillor Darwood.
Councillor Steve Brayshaw.
And Councillor Steve. Okay,
And Councillor Mumtaz Khan.
okay. Thank you very much. If I can just draw your attention to declarations of interest across pages 9 to 10, and as is the usual drill, this relates to disclosable pecuniary interests and non-disclosable pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests. They pertain to matters that we're going to be considering at this morning's meeting of Cabinet. Can I just invite members of the Cabinet in the first instance to advise if there are any declarations of interest that need to be made on any of the matters that we're considering? Councillor Charlene McLean.
Yeah, Councillor Charlene McLean, Cabinet Member for Resident Engagement and Resident Experience, West Ham Ward. I'm not sure if this is disclosable pecuniary interest or non-disclosed pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest, but I just wanted to declare that West Ham are massive everywhere we go. Thank you, Chair.
He doesn't get that. Doesn't get it. It's wasted on that.
That was a really slick, stylish move.
I've been practicing that all morning.
Will be ignored and not minuted.
There are rules.
There are rules. You got one as well.
Yeah, but it won't be anything to do with West Ham.
Don't do a Spurs one.
Item 6, the Custom House and Canning Town Regen acquisitions. As chair of the Custom House Resident Steering Group, I have non-pecuniary interest.
Okay, in that instance, do you just advise
Bishop.
the meeting officer in terms of the decision making, whether Councillor Sarah agrees, if a member can participate in the decision making? Yep. Okay, fine, thank you very much. And then any members of the wider executive, so that's either commissioners, albeit there's the commissioners not here, or deputy cabinet members. No? Okay, great. And there's no declarations of interest we need to be making. Before I jump onto minutes from the decision at Cabinet on the 2nd of May, we welcome one of our chairs of scrutiny, Councillor Susan Marston, is going to be presenting the scrutiny report as agenda item 13, looking into maternity care and health inequalities. In addition, following an email exchange that we had last night, he has a number of questions across agenda item 5, agenda item 6, item 8, and agenda item 9 that she would like to be raising. And in my role as chair of this committee, I have welcomed and am agreeable to those questions being asked, and relevant members of cabinet and corresponding officer as part of their preparation. So welcome, Councillor Martin, and thank you for being here. I'm going to now move on to the minutes, decisions made at cabinet, and that's pages 11 to 22. Noting the contents of those pages, can I just invite members of cabinet only to agree with me that the accurate record of the decisions that were made at cabinet on the 2nd of May? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Now, moving on to appointments to outside bodies, just to advise, there are no appointments to outside bodies that will be announced at this meeting of cabinet today. And then we now move on to the first substantive agenda item, which is the Building of Newham performance report for the first quarter of 2022 to the final quarter of 2022-2023. And please, may I draw your attention to the recommendations which are set on big page number 24-25. And just by way of some short introductory remarks, being the principal lead portfolio member for this report, just wanted to advise that as the final quarter for the fiscal year 2023, this report sets out how we are delivering our Building a Fairer Newham corporate plan. As you all know, we approved the Building a Fairer Newham plan last summer, early summer, soon after the election. It's the consideration of the manifestations that were made in the run-up to the election last May, and it's the substantive operating document which is accompanied by the financial plan of the council as it mobilises, ensure effective, agile and efficient delivery within the budget envelope set. As you know, it's predicated on an outcomes-based performance framework, which has gone through various iterations of evolution and change. And in that, the performance framework itself is a iterative document, as it will be the case in other institutions and organisations. And it essentially just sets out how we're progressing against the outcomes framework to set out clearly and transparently, in line with our good governance agenda, how we are progressing. It will be of no surprise to members of the cabinet and their relevant portfolio team members that in some areas progress is still required, and that's very much reflective of the ongoing transformation and change programme that is happening organisationally under the auspices of the Future Newham programme, and some of the outturn positions in that last quarter are very much indicative of that, but it shouldn't be read that we're satisfied, because we're not. I made very clear to the people of Newham following the election outcome last May that we know we've got to be upping our tempo. We've been on a mission of getting stuff done, and to transform an organisation of the size that is new council is no mean feat. And we are accelerating that change process. We're absolutely clear that the budget and fiscal discipline is all important, but as is the quantitative outcomes that we expect across all of the service areas, so that the resident experience who we serve day in, day out, week in, week out, every month of every year of this term is at the forefront of our mobilisation and our delivery commitments. And as all members of the Cabinet and the wider executive are aware, they are being held to account as a portfolio lead across a number of areas, and we are subject to both the scrutiny and probing of audit committee as well as the scrutiny process of the council. We are wanting to emphasise that we will not rest until we are exemplary in our delivery, and we've got a lot to do. We're not complacent, we're not unrealistic, and we know that we need to do it with the realism, but also at pace. And this performance outturn report highlights a number of issues, and as you'll see in the full report, there's an appendix which outlines in an accessible way the achievements and performance for each of the building a fairer Newham priorities, and those cut across 8 principal missions, from people-powered Newham through to a healthier Newham, through to housing delivery and inclusive economy, through to ageing well and our ongoing and enduring to our young people. I'm going to, at this juncture, invite James Partis, who is our Assistant Chief Executive and Chief Transformation Officer, to talk through some of the principal key headlines. And then I will be inviting questions, and I will also be inviting the chair of one of our scrutiny commissions to also ask questions that she is interested in. So James, over to you.
And just a sort of practical run through of the report for everyone. I won't go through detail. But I think that we could spend quite a lot of time going over every achievement and performance in the report. The sort of main thing I'd like to highlight is this is much more expansive kind of run through of our performance position than we would ordinarily produce for a quarterly report. That's the almost self-evident reason at the end of the first year of the administration, and it's the final quarter of the financial year 22-23. So what does take us through all of those kind of key themes and challenges that the Mayor set out in the introduction, ranging from things that we've done corporately to cost-cutting challenges, the update on sort of transformational plans behind that, and the work the council's done to kind of mobilise behind the building plan. And in addition to that, a reference to a lot of the kind of foundational work that the council's done through the cabinet itself to focus in a really kind of granular and practical way on driving through delivery of all of the corporate plan commitments and the key performance indicators and outcomes that sit behind that. So I won't go through that in too much detail. And then the main thing to highlight from the actual kind of performance summary itself is there's a kind of 1 year on progress summary for each of the priorities, which speaks to all of the major achievements and progress made across the corporate plan commitments for each of the priorities. In many cases, we're seeing completion of a number of corporate plan commitments, and they are relatively early on in the kind of 4-year plan deliverables, which I think is a good thing to sort of note. But in many cases, because the corporate plan is a 4-year plan, what we're able to point to is where the organisation has either mobilised really credible delivery plans for each of those corporate plan commitments, or importantly made positive investment decisions through the budget to align the appropriate finance and resources to increase confidence in our ability to deliver the plan. So this report very much speaks to those decisions made in the budget, and we are citing as transparently as we can where those decisions are driving through a positive delivery. So that's a kind of flavour of the kind of progress made. And I think it's all sort of positive signs you want to see in the first year of a 3-year plan. That the organisation is mobilising all of its available resources to guarantee delivery. There are, of course, exceptions to that, and the report highlights through the appendix that lists the red rated performance indicator, which of the commitments are on track. And you can see from a kind of summary of those commitments that for the most part, where we've identified a red rag rating, it's because there's either some significant complex external dependency that we have to rely upon delivery, whether that's in relation to achieving a change in national government policy when it comes to affordable housing, regulations on the local plan, or we're limited by the kind of practical implementation of new technologies, for example, around our greening of our fleet and vehicles. Some of those technologies are at the very cutting edge of being developed, so at this stage we're working with organisations to identify pathways through challenges. So for the most part, the things that the council has control and grip on, they are the sorts of things that we've got the reason of delivery on when it comes to the position of the corporate plan, which I think is a heartening position to take on that front. On the performance front, you'll also see from the way that the report is set out that not only highlights it sort of major improvements and achievements on performance, whether that's in relation to the significant progress made in relation to education, health and care plan backlogs, or the improvement in our uptake of leisure sensitivities, etc. We've also highlighted for each of the priorities what the major performance improvement areas are. And in many ways, that's the area we need to kind of focus our attention on for the coming year. When it comes to improving resident satisfaction, focusing on the sort of timeliness of handling repairs, improving our plans around reducing fly tipping reporting in the borough. Those are the sorts of things that transparent accountability framework with. Those are the things that are the priorities for the coming year, and resources and absolutely being mobilised rapidly to respond to those. The report then finally takes us through a summary of some key changes that are going to be made to the corporate plan, and they are changes that are kind of quite important to note, because as the Mayor said in her introduction, corporate plans have long-term ambitions. 4 years is a long time in any sector to aim for confidence delivery, and we are operating in very dynamic and challenging circumstances. The kind of socioeconomic conditions we and our residents having to kind of navigate are really challenging. They change on a almost quarterly or monthly basis in many cases, and we've made the sort of proactive decision on the number of corporate plan commitments, and this is set out in the sort of second half of the report to amend the focus or the sort of clarity of the purpose of our corporate plan commitments in light of that context. And you'll see in 4.10 where we're not shifting the focus of the commitment, but we're being much more exacting and deliberate in our focus around what we want to achieve in light of those contexts. And they speak to the challenges around our temporary accommodation, significant cohort, and growing pressure on homelessness support, but also challenges we face with navigating national government policy constraints around what we can do with our local plans. So we are being transparent. We're showing the sort of changes we want to make. They're being made through the democratic process through cabinet, and we will then shift our reporting to kind of align with that. I'll cease the sort of some of the report there, but I do know there are some questions that will follow, so I'll pick up the questions in the next sort of response. That's okay.
Okay, fine. I am going to, in the first instance, invite Councillor Susan Masters to ask your questions around this first, and then I'm going to open up to members of Cabinet and the wider executive if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. In terms of priority 1, health and ageing well, Where we have low numbers of residents in care homes, is this through choice, given the challenges to care home capacity?
Yeah, so we've been, I think, really good kind of comparative performance around the numbers of residents and service users of our care service ending up in independent accommodation. That's as far as we would like people to end up, where possible, as part of our independence. However, part of that is sort of ensuring that we've got robust assessment and joint assessment practices with our health partners, and our Home First approach, which is sort of the pioneering approach that sits behind that. It's the mechanism by which we work with residents that need to be started either to a kind of independent or to a care setting. The bias in that assessment is to work around the strengths of our residents and to understand the assets that they have available to them, because we know the evidence around excellent social practice points to better outcomes long term if you promote independence, you promote the assets that our residents have, you embed their care plans into their actual lived lives, rather than having to kind of fill in unnecessarily around their capacities. And that doesn't negate choice. You know, that assessment process very much allows residents to be a kind of co-producer, a part of that assessment process. And our social workers are very much sort of sensitive to the needs of residents and their own sort of concerns around their care. So the process is really about kind of relying on strengths and assets to promote independent options, but not closing off the option of residential care where required. So it's a good question to ask, because in many ways it's been a really transformational initiative led by the Adult Social Care Department. It's one that perhaps needs a slightly more kind of involved conversation to share the details behind.
So the outcomes are their choice, in short.
Can I just, sorry, can I just interject? I'm going to be bringing in the cabinet lead, and on that point around a fuller discussion that most definitely should come up as part of your forward planning discussions with the portfolio lead as part of scrutiny, because I think it's a really valuable area. But Councillor Neil Wilson, in light of the fact that you're the cabinet lead for health and adult social care, do you want to also just add?
Thanks very much. So Councillor Neil Wilson, cabinet member for health and adult social care. Just to add what James has already highlighted, I think it's important, and thank you very much, Susan, for the question. It is important that we stress that the element of choice is not negated here. It's a process that we work closely with. I mean, not only in terms of the discharge hub, which has been actually quite successful from COVID onwards with Bart's Health, but it's also about that more preventative work so that people don't end up at an acute hospital position, that there's appropriate needs-based analysis of each individual. It's individualization, personalization, and yes, there's a rather fragmented care provider market, but where we have more levers, actually make certain that the assessment is done and that it's a strength-based approach based on the resident and individual personalisation. I can't stress that enough, but I think you're absolutely right that there is a need for us to engage with the scrutiny process, as we already have in the last term, but we've acknowledged, Mayor, that, you know, we do need to re-examine this in the forthcoming scrutiny programme with Susan, that's already highlighted, with Jason, the corporate sector involved, that this topic of provision of adult care, what does personalisation mean, and how do we actually make certain it's successful for all of our residents?
In terms of my second question, moving on to priority 2, and I'm very happy to have a short answer on this, because most of my questions are very much sort of yes or no. If numbers of benefit claimants are reducing, do we have evidence this is for the right reasons, such as residents actually entering employment or training?
Yeah, so the trend does show a year-on-year reduction in claimants, and we know through COVID period that Newham was one of the most acutely affected boroughs economically in terms of residents requiring support from government. So it's a simple question with quite a complex answer, I'm afraid, because part of the reduction is no doubt due to changes in national conditions and the freeing up of the economy that creates further work opportunities for residents to take advantage of. But it's also a direct, and I think this again would be a good topic for follow-up conversation with scrutiny. I think there are direct links between the reduction in benefit payment account and the work of our annual money work service and the inclusive economy and community development strategies that have sat behind a lot of the around that area. And I think it'd be useful to kind of bring those two analyses together to demonstrate that sort of direct link.
And just to add to that, it will be an area that I'll be flagging up in my first induction meeting of the municipal year with the relevant scrutiny chair. And there's a wider piece of work that we've been thinking about doing tail end of the first term. And we're beginning to mobilise around it, in part because we're going to be refreshing and updating our inclusive growth strategy and our community wealth building strategy, because it's come to the 3-year point of review and refresh strategies. And one of the things that we're picking up is there seems to be evidentially a material shift in the economic condition of some of our residents, but we've got to do much more analytical work. As before, it warrants a fuller discussion through the formal scrutiny process. And I'm going to be bringing in Vicky. Has any more to that? And apologies everyone for the background noise. You may need to elevate your voice, but hopefully you can hear despite the distraction.
No, I was just, I guess the thing, sorry there, because of the background noise, I missed past that. They were currently in the process of looking at the our newer model, you know, for fit for purpose as it can be and response to the situation as is for our residents in terms of both the employment market and financial imperatives in those areas. We always want to make sure that we our work on that is informed both by data and
Okay. All right, is that okay for now? Because I'm conscious this isn't a meeting of scrutiny, it's a meeting of cabinet to take decisions.
No,
Any other
questions? I mean, I think it would be a very brief yes, no answer.
Yeah, okay. Are there any other questions that you may have about?
A really quick one, which again, I just need a one sentence answer. With 18 of the 35 KPIs, the report states it's not appropriate to set targets as measures still in development. When will the work on these be completed? And in their absence, how are we holding our performance to account?
Yeah, so that figure of 18 of 35 KPIs refers to both measures that are not appropriate to have targets set and also measures that are in development. There's only one measure of the 35 that is still in development, and that's the flight tip started thanks to the strike challenges over the last year and challenges around setting an accurate and honest baseline for that particular measure. The rest of the measures of the 18 are measures where setting a target would be, and this is quite common in performance monitoring, could produce misleading diagnoses because higher may not be that bad and lower may not be good. But I think those particular measures, for example, I will keep it really brief. Counting the number of people approaching us for support of domestic violence, seeing that go up might be really difficult because people are coming about the support, but it might also be an indication of more structural systemic issues with safeguarding and safety in the home. The rest of the 17 fall into that category, and I do think there's more we can do to set better parameters for giving insight about what the data is telling us, but the data is in the I'm very happy to have a follow-up conversation on those.
All right, and any follow-up conversation has to be done within the regime of executive scrutiny protocol and the operating model, please. Right, did you want to, yeah.
No, are we, Susan finished that
Yeah.
one? Yeah. Mine is really in relation to the health and ageing well, because it gives me an opportunity to flag up to this committee and others possibly watching that we've been shortlisted for the local government committee awards this evening for the ageing well strategy, based on consultation of 1,500 residents in the first tranche and still continuing. But also to say that there's reference on page 31 to the Well Newham initiative, and that is quite clearly a corporate thing that we actually had a full council dedicated to, and the launch is this afternoon at the East Ham Leisure Centre adjacent to this building. And I think it's just a chance, Mayor, for us to highlight that those are our achievements, and we often, particularly in the area of the health and ageing well, need to acknowledge our partnership working. So I'm pleased with our partnership working with East London Foundation Trust in acquiring and development of new healthcare facilities and key worker housing. And finally, the issue that I think segues neatly from where Councillor Masters was talking about. We may have had a 30% increase in leisure centre visits this year compared to last, but that was with a low base because of the effects of the COVID and people in the cost of living crisis, not necessarily prioritising leisure visits, but that we will improve because we're hopefully through our recommissioning leisure offer, it's not just hopefully, it's our intention to improve that offer to engagement with that leisure offer further. And the next one on page 32 is the people with learning disability in receipt of long-term services in employment. That's low, and we need to work carefully to improve access to employment for people who are Care Act eligible with joint working. I think it highlights not just internal cross-working with our new and work and supported employment team, but also the other agencies. So I welcome that, and I think it's important. I know other colleagues may wish to talk about how we've gone further to amend the plan, but that the plan is seen as a living document. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I've noted all of those comments, valued welcomes. I mean, one of the things that I was also going to say is I'm very much looking forward to the first quarter report of this, of the 2023-2024 year. And I would expect, and I am hopeful, that in the areas represented as in the way that they have been in the final quarter outturn report for the performance position, very different because of having accelerated the changes that were introduced after the election last year, because you'll always know in any organisational change and transformation, it takes a little while to, one, be socialised, land, and then embed, and everyone getting into that as part of their normative practice. But as I said before, you know, I'm under no illusion around the further work that needs to be done in order to get to a world-class, exemplary, agile and proficient fully one council approach organisation. Right, are there any other questions, colleagues? I've got Councillor John Whitworth, and then that's going to be the question I take, and then we'll move on to recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor John Whitworth, Deputy Cabinet Member for Planning and Development, Equality and Climate Emergency. The first point I would like to make is on the neighbourhood priority, page 34. It states that we continue to actively campaign against the Silvertown Tunnel. But the Silvertown Tunnel, of course, is going ahead and construction's underway. So it's more accurate to say that we are closely monitoring the construction of the tunnel and campaigning for a good public transport and active travel offer that will accompany it. I think that is the position now. And I have a question on the seeing inclusive economy priority, which is on page 49. And this is regarding the maximising of the number of new homes to be built at certain rent levels. A proposed revision is to explore disruptive funding models to help rebalance developments. I would like a bit more detail on what is being done here and what is envisaged.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to just pull it in, Vicky, the Interim Corporate Director for Inclusive Economy and Housing, and then I may also bring in Darren Levy and then James, but quick answers, please.
Absolutely. So, as the work council in delivering housing, we are always to balance constraints of getting as much affordable housing as we can with viability, which basically means development which developers are prepared to put up or to bring forward. So it gives them a sufficient profit margin as well as providing the homes that we need. Now, at the moment, because of issues such as construction inflation and other matters, the homes are becoming more expensive. Therefore, the rural housing to be provided is squeezed. The money we are doing the industry experts in order to talk to us about different ways in which additional finance could be introduced into schemes. Additional finance could be introduced into schemes so that there is more money available and therefore more affordable housing can be brought forward.
Okay, Darren, anything to add? James, Partis, anything? Nope. Okay, fine. All right, John. Right, moving on to the recommendations, big page 24, number 25. Reasons set out in the report and its appendices, Cabinet is recommended to 1, note and consider the progress as at Q4 2022-2023 in the delivery of the building of Ferranum strategy and the corporate delivery plan as set out in this report in Appendix 1 and 2. 2, note the position at Q4 2022-2023 in Ferranum key performance indicators as set out in paragraph 4.8 in Appendix 1 and 2. And 3, agree the corporate delivery plan change requests 23-24 in section 4.10 to 4.13, pages 26 to 28. Is that agreed, Cabinet colleagues only?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
That's agreed. Thank you, Joy. Right, now we're going to be moving on to the next agenda item, which is the Custom House and Canning Town regeneration. I'm going to be also passing over to Councillor Zulfikar Ali because this primarily pertains to the acquisitions of our strategic housing delivery. And please note that there are some exempt appendices pertaining to this paper. If there are any questions relating to exempt appendices, I am going to need to revoke the exclusion of press and public, and that will take a little bit of time. And then we can address any questions at that point, and then we'll reconvene in public with media and members of the public present. The recommendations are set out on big page number 135 to 136, and just really wanted to advise that in line with the ambition for Custom House and Canning Town, and the progress that we have been making since 2018 to reboot those regeneration schemes, the master plan has been developed and designed in collaboration and with the participation of residents. I wanted to say at this juncture, in no co-design, co-production programme are you going to get 100% residents happy. It happens on Carpenter's estate, 100% of residents weren't happy. It happens on every single development scheme, and you will hear noises from different organisations, individuals that represent a group of residents, and that's perfectly legitimate and perfectly fine to have a different opinion and a different view. What is improper and what isn't right is the circulation of untruths and misleading information, because that's undermining of the good governance and democratic process that everyone should be ascribing. And in this instance, I know that with Custom House and the Canning Town regeneration, there has been a mobilisation amongst a small group of housing justice campaigners, which is their entitlement and their right to protest, to campaign, to give an alternative view, to have a different worldview and to have a different perspective. But I am comfortable and confident, and I am assured that we have worked both really hard in involving our residents in line with our democracy agenda, our co-production, co-design promise, and we are listening. listening and doing all those things doesn't mean we're ever going to get to 100% satisfaction and contentment by every single resident. That is life. But what I will challenge is the misrepresentation of what this administration is about and what the various programme teams of officers have been doing across specific schemes, because that's not right, it's improper and it's misleading, and I just don't think it helps anyone. Our mission and our purpose is to deliver homes our people can afford. It's to ensure that we're transforming neighbourhoods that for too long have been neglected and have been left to rot and decline, and has led to all the other social issues that we're challenged by and having to contend with, including the impact on families and on our children and our young people. And it will be negligent of us to just slow down and stop. So on that note, I'll pass over to Zulfikar to talk about the acquisitions element of this scheme. And I will then invite officers to say a few comments, or make a few comments, and then I'll open up to questions.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Zulfikar Ali, Cabinet Lead for Finance and Resources. As you rightly said, Chair, this report is about acquisition and appropriation of lands, move things forward, and there will no doubt be further reports as required in due course. Regeneration schemes in the borough, as you said, Chair, are an integral part of our building fair, new ambition, and this administration is committed to improve quality of environment, housing, and generate opportunities for our residents. And in doing so, Canning Town and Custom House regeneration scheme are part of the Council's local plan 2018. And these schemes are proposing to deliver 2,500 much needed new and refurbished homes, 50% of which will be generally affordable homes. Since 2019, Council have been working alongside with our residents in the area to develop the vision and the master plan for this site. As Mayor has already said, clearly, democracy works, and clearly we can't please everyone. But certainly we are here to serve the majority of the people, and their wishes prevail in that sense. So I'm pleased to say, Chair, that significant progress has been made, and residents have continued to take the lead in the visioning and development of the master plan. At Custom House, the outline master plan has been submitted for planning approval following endorsement in the successful residents' ballot. At Canning Town, preparations for the master plan are well underway, active to deliver a comprehensive regeneration scheme benefiting residents across the borough and living locally. Improve facilities, new homes, civic space, and pedestrian and cycling routes are being proposed as part of the plan. Move things forward and plan ahead. This report seeks approval to a few important actions, support and assure comprehensive schemes. There are three parts to the recommendations before you this morning. Firstly, the report recommends appropriation of land for planning purposes. Although the council is the freeholder of this land, the purpose here is to ensure we plan ahead and deal with any overriding and legal covenants or third-party rights or issues which may emerge, so that we have a smooth implementation plan and resolve any issues which may frustrate the progress in future. I would like to add here, Chair, that as part of the plan, it is necessary to acquire two sites within the proposed area to assemble the entire land to successfully deliver these comprehensive regeneration schemes. We would like to secure ownership and titles as soon as possible once schemes start on site. This will reduce any further delays, enabling us to press ahead once all necessary preparations are done. Such, the report recommends the purchase of the two sites, namely 74 to 76 Rathbone Street on E16. This site is central to Canning Town, and as a corner site will improve the overall scheme. And the second site is the GP surgery at number 16 Freemason Road, again E16. The existing GP practice in Custom House is to be relocated to the council's partnership with the NHS. It will continue to offer at the existing site services that they currently provide until the new premises can open to the patients. It is expected the new facility will offer much improved health provision And buying these sites now will ensure the new homes can be built in future. I would like to add here, Jay, that both the schemes or, the purchases that we are referring to here are perfectly capable of independently being developed, possibly in conjunction with the land, which is the adjoining land of which Neom owns. And this would generate council with capital receipts or new affordable homes, whether it is part of any estate regeneration program or not. So each purchase is supported by independent valuation. And the report also requests, Chair, that we enter into a conditional agreement with Health and Care Space Neom to build a brand new health center in the heart of the Kennington Custom House regeneration area. This will enable clarity for the partners in taking things forward as a full business case, and obtaining planning consent can then be moved forward. If agreed, this morning, a business plan for it will be submitted to the Cabinet during the coming months. Finally, may I say, Chair, the officers have undertaken full due diligence and the financial modeling to ensure viability of these schemes. And the indications are that both schemes are viable, and as expected, officers will continue to be vigilant and monitor the situation in due course. With those words, Chair, I'll invite Conrad or Vicky who would like to add anything.
Okay, right, Vicky, first, do you want to say anything about the Custom House regeneration, and then just really short contributions, please?
Yes, thank you. I think Councillor Rowley said very well, just to advise Cabinet that a further paper on the actual conduct of the development of the master plan and the proposed conduct of the ballot will be coming to Cabinet next month. And this is principally a technical property acquisition paper as already set out. I believe there were some questions posed with reference to the nature of the affordable housing that's going to be provided under the development. And just want to clarify there, paragraph 4.9 of the nature of housing offering and potential discounts which that provides to residents. There are two options: social rent and unaffordable rent. Both, as you will see, table offer quite significant discounts over market rent and therefore contribute to affordable residents. Any new social homes created will be at one or other of those two rates. The exact mix will be determined by the amount of grants and other sources of funding available at the time of developments come forward. The other thing to highlight is that existing social tenants referring to a new property of the same size will have their rent held at the same levels.
Okay, right, so I am going to open up to any questions from members of the Cabinet Executive in the first instance, and then I'll invite Councillor Susan Masters to ask her question. Okay, Councillor Sarah Ruiz.
Just firstly to support your opening comments on this report. I think that we have tried our very best to engage with the majority of residents, talking about Custom House now, not Canning Town. And you're absolutely right, you can't please the people all the time. This is a really important move for Custom House Regen. We've been in negotiations with the health service, the health centre, for a considerable time, and I'm really pleased that we've at last managed to, I was going to say close the deal, but it could have gone to a compulsory purchase order situation and we would have held up by considerable reform. The people, the residents of Custom House have been really poorly served regarding health facilities, so they are really, really delighted that it's going to be a brand new surgery, larger capacity, better facilities, and I think that we have spent a considerable amount of time reassuring the residents that the same GP who operate out of 16 Freemasons Road won't necessarily be the same occupants as are in the new building. So I think we need to give some assurance there, because that is what we have been assured as a steering group, that we're not going to move the actual GPs from one site to another. because that would not necessarily resolve the issues of poor health.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, I will,
You've frozen.
no, I'm saying, and I'm just struggling to
Find a question.
find an absolute, question.
I think it's about the question would be about reassurance that we will be re-looking at the GP's practice that goes into the new building.
Right, okay. I am going to invite Vicky Clark in the first instance, just around that reassurance.
I'm not an expert on health tenancies and the mechanism by which the health service do that. I don't know if Councillor Wilson's got any thoughts on that, but equally we will do our best to look into it. I think the first thing to say, and the second thing to say is that Giles will be able to confirm this is online, that the terms of this and the nature of these are still to be determined in detail. Imagine that will provide scope to allow that review to happen, but
Okay, I'm assuming at this stage, just because it's in its early phase, the broad outline proposition is understood, but the detail around that is still being worked through, because that's my understanding, and we're not at that phase and stage yet. And I know it's been a really vexed issue in terms of the health provision. It was a big issue when I was the councillor in Custom House in 2014, and its inefficacy reflecting a network of ineffective and significantly underperforming GP practices in Newham, which have and are being systematically addressed, not necessarily at the pace that we would want to see them as a council, but certainly being addressed, and that will be picked up in the detailed negotiations with health partners and via the relevant sort of partnership mechanisms that we will have. I don't particularly want to have any more commentary because I'm just really conscious of time. I will invite Giles Clark. Giles, can you comment on this element at all? Because I'm assuming that you've also begun or have been having conversations not only with the Custom House, Canning Town Regenerate, the inclusive contribution team, but also health and adult social care officers, particularly those that lead on our partnership rate, our partnership model.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So two things. So terms of the lease to health and care space in Newham have been agreed, and they obviously contain restrictions that the property will be used for healthcare purposes only. The further protection that the council has obviously is that it is the principal shareholder of health and care space Newham,
Exactly.
which is the council's partnership with NHS providers. And so through health and care space Newham, we will also be able to control the GPs that operate from the practice.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, are there any other questions from members or members of the executive? Carleen.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Carleen Lee Parkway, sorry, I do know my name. Councillor Carleen Lee Parkway, Cabinet Member for Housing Needs, Homelessness and Private Rented Sector. I guess I just wanted to draw out, just from what it is that you were saying earlier, Councillor Ali, regarding the acquisition, and actually bring it back to what this is all really about, which is about people in this borough, our residents, homes, and the importance of giving them good quality homes. I don't really have a question, but I don't want this to pass us by without actually saying what it is that I want to say, which is this is actually a big part to what it is that we're trying to do for the residents of Newham. And a big part of that is around dealing with the issues of our housing waiting list, dealing with the issues that are affecting our residents day to day, about having quality homes that are affordable. So I welcome this report and I welcome the work that's been going on in the background. But I do just want to say for the record, this is not just it. There are many things happening within this organisation that are trying to do better for residents. And this is just part of it. The work that's happened within Canning Town or Custom House, and for anybody that's lived in Newham for a significant amount of years have known that that area has been left behind, especially Custom House. The fact that we're doing something great should be commended. So thank you, Councillor Ali. There was no question there.
Okay, thank you for the statement. I'm going to encourage members of the cabinet and to land questions, but thank you very much for the sentiments nonetheless. Right, I am going to invite Councillor Susan Masters.
So it's a really quick one, and Sheriff Health Scrutiny. I'm delighted to hear new clubs going ahead. I think my only concern is though, it's sort of slight disappointment with with the youth dot facility. Whether there are going to be any requests, stipulations around the youth from outside, given our current shortage of NHS dentists and for the class that have already been referred.
Okay, and I just, I'm going to take, I want to get officers first.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I think
Giles, would you like to respond to that?
This was a question about including dental practices within the health centre. I understand.
Yes.
I think this is a matter that I will take away for Health and Care Space Newham, as they will be responsible for identifying the practices and the operators within the building. I'm also the council's director on Health and Care Space Newham, so we can ensure that that is definitely part of the decision-making process in terms of how the building is occupied and the health provision that is provided from it.
Can I just add also, Councillor Masters, in terms of oral health and dentistry, it's a different part of the NHS family, different regime, and the Health Space Newham is primarily primary care provision over dentistry, and it's
no under primary care.
Yeah, but it's not been since, and I'm not appraised in terms of progress against that area of primary care focus, notwithstanding the serious nature of oral health and dentistry provision in Newham, which has become catastrophised as a consequence of COVID-19. And I will invite Neil to just add a bit more, yeah?
Yeah, just very briefly. I mean, on a very good question, Councillor Masters, on 7.3 and 7.4 in the main report, if we're looking at a significantly larger facility, both in in terms of physical space, but also in terms of the range of services, it certainly would be just including a GP practice is a crucial thing there. So it's a GP practice and the discussions have already taken place, as Giles has indicated, with Health and Care Space Newham as a portfolio lead with Giles and the relevant directors and yourself there in terms of Health and Wellbeing Board. We're alerted to the fact about GP provision, primary care networks needs to be integrated with that. We're looking at a co-location model of very often of health services, but people have their best point of contact with GP. So it's within that wider landscape, but you've raised a very important point about how we might include dentistry within that. But I think I should stop it there, because otherwise we'll get into another debate, which is for a future discussion when it comes back.
Okay, fine. I'm not really going to take any more questions. Right. Okay, I'm going to move on to the recommendations. Page number 160, page number 161. For the reasons set out in the report and its appendices, Cabinet is recommended to agree 3.1.1 for the council to acquire the freehold interest of 1 to 5 heads to 1.
Oh, you're on the wrong one.
That should be, sorry, I'm in the wrong one, aren't I?
135.
Is it? I'm ahead of myself. Right, recommendations, big page number 135. For the reasons set out in the report appendices, Cabinet is recommended to authorise 3.1 in relation to the appropriation of the land for planning purposes, 3.1.1 to acknowledge that the purpose of the appropriation is to enable the use of section 203-206 of the Housing and Planning Act 2016 to override all third-party rights and interests that are a constraint to the development of the land subject to the conditions in section 203 being satisfied. 3.1.2 land outlined in red on the two plans at Appendix 1, open bracket land, close bracket, is no longer required for the purposes for which it is currently held. Open bracket vacant housing land, close bracket. 3.1.3 to agree and delegate power to the Director of Resources in consultation with the lead member for Finance and Corporate Services pursuant to paragraph 5 below to A, implement the appropriation of the land for planning purposes under section 122, open bracket 1, close bracket of the Local Government Act 1972, and with all matters related or incidental to the appropriation of the land. Is that agreed, Cabinet members?
Great, Chair.
Agreed by me. Thank you very much. Now we're going to be jumping on to agenda item 7, which is Head Street 6 unit acquisition, and I'm going to be handing over to Councillor Zulfikar Ali and Councillor Shabar Mohammed to talk to this by way of introductions, and then I am going to invite officers to add any more, and then I'll open up to questions. So Councillor Shabar Mohammed, do you want to kick off first?
I'll do, yeah. Thank you, Chair. As we all know, there is a national shortage of supply in the housing market, and that leads to exceptional pressures on local authorities like Newham. And we are looking at all possible options to cater for the growing pressure in this area, particularly in terms of homelessness, as well as the council's finances. And I'm sure most of us are aware that currently we have the highest number of households in temporary accommodation. This administration is, as we all know, committed to supporting our residents and treat them with respect and dignity, and find wider sustainable solutions in order to support them, to ensure that their social well-being and the outcomes are catered for, as well as reducing budgetary pressures on the council. As part of the council's strategies to deal with the crisis, which is imposed by the central government's failure to address the national homelessness crisis, we're looking at various approaches to ensure that we have some short-term, medium-term, and long-term opportunities to reduce the cost and find homes for us. The proposal contained in this report is a continuation of our much accelerated acquisition program to support our efforts to reduce homelessness in this borough. And the report recommends for acquisition of the 6 flats in a small developments in Tower Hamlet, number 1 to 5 Head Street. The seller of the development is an experienced developer in East London, and the council has been offered the acquisition on a freehold basis for full management and maintenance. In practical terms, in July 2023, the council will take ownership of the entire scheme, if agreed. It is intended that the lease arrangements will be put in place with a suitable third-party organization who will manage this on our behalf. This could be such as new homes or local space in a cost-effective manner. And this will enable the council to discharge its duty to homeless households. May I say, Chair, that the scheme is located in Limehouse, in Tower Hamlets, and that is within 30 minutes of public transport from both Stratford and the council's offices at Dockside. And this fall outside of borough, but within the council's designated geographical area for temporary accommodation, and is easily accessible via public transport. We already have a number of families who are accommodated in Tower Hamlets. So these 6 units are intended for open market sale, but we intervened, and we are fortunate enough that they are available to us at London House. So these are high quality specification. This is something that we want to make sure that all our future homes are fit for purpose, meet efficiency, standard energy, and the EPC rating. And in all these units, the A grade. An external evaluation has been undertaken, and this meets the financial requirements in terms of the return. And the council officers are working with helper to conclude the negotiation subject to approval here today. Shaban, would you like?
I just want to say thank you for the finance team and housing services for all the work they've been doing, especially around the acquisitions. It's been really, this piece of work has been really, really important. And I can see the difference it has made to those families that when we've acquired these acquisitions and we're putting families into brand new, good quality property and the difference it can make. And I think, you know, I know it's investment, but it's investment in our residents. It's making sure that we keep families in borough. It's like Mayor said, the effects it has on children when we do go into the PRS sector and families are in poor quality accommodation, the effects it has on children, the health impacts it has. So it's really good that we're finally investing in properties around, you know, I know it's out of borough, but it's still property that is of a good standard and can make a difference to those families. And it's, like I said, I think it's really, really important that we continue the acquisitions programme to make sure that we're investing in families in the borough and at the end of the day, the burden of not paid accommodation to decrease that by having a really effective acquisitions programme. Thank you.
Fine, like either Sam Fordin or Conrad Hall to add any officer commentary.
Chair, I have nothing to add, but Sam is on the board. And so I would your permission to make comments.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you. No, nothing real to add from Councillor Ali's input. I think just the important thing with this acquisition is ever that it's ready for completion within 4 weeks. So residents should be in situ within 8 weeks. And as Councillor Mohammed had, that can have a huge difference on those lives.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, are there any questions, colleagues? Councillor Rohit Dasgupta.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I would like to congratulate the relevant cabinet leads for bringing this. I think it's a very positive paper, and as Councillor Shaban just mentioned, it's going to bring much needed decent homes for residents of Newham. And we know what housing security is, and this definitely is a step in the right direction. Can I ask the cabinet leads to confirm when this will be completed and when residents will be able to move in?
Sam, would you like?
Good 4 weeks.
I think it's 8 weeks.
4 weeks, isn't it? 4 weeks.
And in.
Thank you. So it's 4 weeks until practical completion, if all going well, and then it'll be another kind of 4 to 8 weeks until residents will be in situ.
Thank you.
Okay, fine. Is that satisfactory? Yep. Are there any other questions? No. Okay, I'm going to be inviting colleagues to look at the recommendations I started previously. Recommendations 3.1, for the reasons set out in the report and its appendices, Cabinet is recommended to agree. 3.1.1. For the council to acquire the freehold interest of 1 to 5 heads 10 QN, open bracket, the property, close bracket. 3.1.2, to delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Resources in consultation with lead member for Housing Management and Modernisation and the lead member for Finance and Corporate Services to negotiate and finalise the terms and legal documentation for the acquisition in line with the terms set out at exempt appendices 1, 2 and 3, and to complete the acquisition subject to completion of the necessary due diligence. And 3.1.3, that the property should be leased to a suitable third-party housing organisation. And finally, 3.1.4, to delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Resources in consultation with the lead members for Housing Management and Modernisation and Finance and Resources to determine the arrangements for the council's letting of the property in line with paragraphs 5.4 and 5.10 below, and to enter into the necessary associated legal and contractual documentation. Is that agreed, Cabinet members?
Agreed.
By Cabinet and myself, thank you very much. Now moving on to drum roll. It's a really important strategy, and I'm going to be inviting Councillor Shaban Mohammed. You've got no more than 3 minutes. Management strategy.
I'll try my.
And over to you, and then I'll invite any officers for further commentary, open up to questions and get to recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first time the council has done an asset management strategy since 2013. Newham Council is committed to improving the housing stock. I'm proud to be responsible for this strategic plan to modernise homes for tenants and leaseholders. We are dedicated to ensuring all residents have a voice, any decision to make their homes safe, warm, energy efficient, and in a estate block neighbourhood that they can be proud of. We have promised to privatise investment in our housing stock to improve the quality of the life of residents and protect their homes for future generations. This asset management strategy sets out how we plan to do that. This strategy focuses on work over the next 2 years and outlines our approach to in delivering on short-term priorities, existing planned programs, and will perform to launch our roadmap for long-term investment. It sets out our key principles and will deliver a capital investment of 200 million over the next 2 years to enhance and maintain our housing stock in the short term and in the future. Our residents form the foundation of housing neighbourhoods and communities across the borough through resident engagement. We'll keep residents engaged throughout the process to ensure transparency, co-production, and overall, it is key that we work together to improve resident satisfaction with where they live. The importance of maintaining homes to high standards has never been higher prominence in the social housing sector. Newham Council is committed to provide and maintain safe, energy efficient, high quality homes for our residents. We have our key priorities for the asset management strategy are priority 1, quality and safety, providing high quality homes to our residents. Priority 2, decarbonisation, making sure that all our homes meet high energy and address the climate emergency. And priority 3, resident satisfaction, listening to residents through an effective resident engagement, involvement and co-production. Once we roll out the capital programme, this will have a big impact on our estates and should have less impact on the repairs and maintenance service. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to be inviting the Director of Housing, Darren Levy, to also contribute by way of introductory remarks. Or unless you want to draw attention to specific things.
I'll draw attention just.
Thank you.
In terms of the recommendation is for Cabinet to approve the strategy for us to carry out formal consultation. Coming back to Cabinet with the final document September, October. I just want to clarify around the reasons for being an interim strategy. By doing this strategy, it allows us to tie in with the next 5-year housing delivery strategy. And we also have a really important piece of work at the moment, which is around finalising our plans for decarbonisation of the housing stock, which will be a long-term 20 to 30 year works, which we need to do the next strategy.
Online, if there's anything further Donna wants to add.
No, nothing further. I think from what Councillor Mohammed has said and also Darren, just to say that it does allow us, this interim strategy allows us to be able to charge ahead with the investment that we have planned that is already set out in the HRA business plan.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Just a couple of quick comments from me. I'm obviously appreciative of all the hard work that's gone into developing this a sort of interim strategy paper as we continue doing the work in this area in the context of our asset management as it pertains to our own council housing stock being largely neglected for the best part of about 15 to 20 years. And the scale of the challenge is significant, and this is no mean feat, and it's not an easy endeavour. And I think we should rightly be outraged that we are having to pick up a significant substantive legacy issue, and despite all of our endeavours since 2018, where we began to shift the dial across our council stock and addressing the urgent issues around fire safety, because that was the priority, and now coming to the substantive work, I am only remorseful that our residents live in our council estates have not seen the improvements as rapidly as we had hoped. I'm also very enthused at the opportunity that this presents with regards to our climate emergency action response. As everyone knows, we are intending to get to carbon neutral 2030 and zero 2045, and the 16,000 plus stock portfolio will play a significant to that, and all the exciting things that are emerging through the retrofit process, including innovations, are really exciting to see. And please be assured, colleagues, that this is a really significant area of the council, and a huge amount of diligence is being applied, particularly as we move into a operating phase where we're ensuring that we are hardwiring the One Council cross-departmental approach to our stock and asset management and modernisation programme. And that also includes modernisation of the public realm in and around our council stock and estates, and the role that the environment, as well as the community safety and crime team, will be playing with that effort, in line with some of our broader ambitions relating to our own commitment to the circular economy, increasing green space in the borough and biodiversity, all of that being injected in our vision and ambition for our modernisation programme. I'm going to open up to some questions, but not many. Just looking at the clock, I'm going to get Councillor Neil Wilson and then Councillor Anne Easter, and then I can't see anyone, and I'll just do some wrap-up words from Councillor Shaban Mohammed. Councillor Neil Wilson.
Yeah, the officers and lead members are to be praised for saying that there's going to be flexibility in the strategy, and I note on 828 that is in accordance with the legislative changes that are coming down with consequence from the social housing regulation bill. But that's an inclusion of AWAB's law requiring social landlords to fix hazards such as damp and mould that has made particular headlines in recent months. To what extent are we reassured that we're going to be able to have that, there's a parliamentary problem necessarily with backlogs from central government when we have the next reiteration? I know we're already starting work on this, but about how we can make certain that the strategy is an evolving document with that damp and mould issue.
So we're out to consultation on the damp and mould strategy.
Yep.
The Cabinet will also be aware some of the forums that we're carrying out with combining the two. So we will be talking about damp and mould within the context of the asset strategy, because it is the absolute core piece. The two things are very much hand in hand, and the damp and mould sit.
And just to be clear, that consultation will be at both the tenants and leaseholder forums and the housing scrutiny, which has been set up.
Yeah, so we've got a range of tenant and leaseholder forums. We've also got a number of online channels, and it's also an important part of the work programme for open scrutiny as well.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Councillor Anne Easter.
Thank you. My question, if I may, to Darren Levy is, how will you make sure that that consultation includes everyone who wants to take part, many of whom may not have access to online facilities?
So I may pass over to my colleagues detail, but just to confirm, we've got a range of in-person tenant and leaseholder forums as well. We're in person. They're based locally. And we've also got some dedicated resident forums in person, which are specifically to damp and mould and the next strategy, with a range of other channels.
I'm just going to pass over to Lisa to give a bit more detail.
Yes, we have a committed resident engagement officer that is working also with the officer that is doing the forums for damp and mould. We are using all the channels that we can possibly use, not just via our website. Notices are going up in our blocks. Our resident engagement officer meets regularly with a variety of our residents, so there's word of mouth. And we're also putting notices up in the hubs and anywhere else, libraries, anywhere else that we can think of, to ensure that it reaches as many of our residents that we can possibly get to.
Thank you.
All right, fine. Councillor Joshua Garfield.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for this report, Councillor Mohammed. I grew up in council housing in Newham and I still live in a council block. And I wanted to ask, and forgive me if it was mentioned and I missed it, but I have gone through the report and I didn't see in much detail anything about what we're doing with regards to surplus space on our housing estates. So I'm thinking, for example, in our block, we've got a communal garden that, shall we say, could be nicer. I know that there are estates in my neighbourhood that have got disused garages, poorly placed bits of shrubbery that has turned into weeds and perhaps a bit of a dumping ground. And with an eye on decarbonisation, which is excellently detailed in the report with regards to how we meet our net zero commitments, what are we doing or what are we planning to do with regards to making sure that those additional bits of space can provide sustainable urban drainage systems for housing estates, or that they could even perhaps be infill new build developments in the near future, or indeed they can simply be spruced up so that those communal gardens can be better enjoyed by residents like me and my neighbours and everybody else in the borough who lives in council home.
I'm going to say on that, I'm working very closely with Councillor Patel and Councillor Assa around communal gardens and that space. Brilliant. And how we utilise it, because obviously we do have some residents that live in higher large story buildings. They don't have access to gardens. What we want to do is really invest in those communal spaces, making those spaces enjoyable for those families, you know, whether they want to have barbecues or things like that there, just that, you know, enhance that space and give them that real pleasure that they're living in a council block, but, you know, they've got all these facilities, looking at, you know, the play areas, enhancing those, what we can do with, you know, like I said to you, even if we've got spaces we can build on, we will try to utilise as much of that space as possible. I think, you know, I think over the last 10 or 12 years, there's been a real mistrust between a tenant leaseholder and the council. And the first and foremost, what tenant leaseholder forum are ways of bridging that, housing fund days are ways of bridging that. And it's, again, building tenants associations up in the borough, getting residents involved, getting them to actually take pride in where they live, and the council actually listening to those residents and driving that change forward. It's going to take a bit of time, don't get me wrong, but we are committed to our residents, tenant leaseholders, and making sure that we utilise every space in our council estates, and residents are there to enjoy it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, super. Right. I am going to now wind up. Are there any concluding remarks that are urgent, critical, necessary?
All I was going to say, it's one council approach, and I'm really proud that, you know, we're actually working together as a team now with environment, the AS, community safety, and actually we want to work with residents again and listen to their views and drive real change forward for them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, colleagues, I'm going to draw your recommendations on big page number 173. 2.1, for the reasons set out in the report and its appendix, Cabinet is recommended to agree. 2.1, officers to commence formal consultation exercise with residents on draft interim HRA asset management strategy 2023 to 2025, set out in appendix 1 as detailed at paragraph 4.4 below. 2.2, further, Cabinet is asked to note 2.2.1, the terms of the draft interim HRA asset management strategy 2023 to 2025. 2.2.2, that a further report will be brought to Cabinet to consider the outcome of the resident consultation and to finalise and implement the interim HRA asset management strategy 2023 to 2025. And finally, 2.2.3, that further reports will be brought to Cabinet in due course with proposals for the 5-year and 30-year asset management strategies referred to at paragraph 4.5 below. Just as a quick aside, 30 years seems like a really huge time frame in the context of innovation happening within the construction, that or caboodle sector.
It will be more of an outline business
Right.
approach to it, so it will set out sort of investment requirements.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, brilliant. So having heard all the recommendations, agreeable.
Agreed.
Okay, great, and I agree as well. Let's move on to the next agenda item, number 9. This is the acceptance and distribution of the household support fund to vulnerable residents in their time of need. Colleagues, you will not need me to remind you about the catastrophic impact that the Tories have unleashed on this country, not just in the recent period, but over 12+ years of the catastrophic austerity endeavours and debacle that they have unleashed on this country and its people. We are by no means incubated from impact, and we disproportionately have been affected, and disproportionately we see the corrosive impact of the crisis on particular vulnerable communities. And I am pleased, as part of our wider approach that's anchored in our value beliefs, our moral compass about doing right for people that have been left behind and neglected and haven't been treated with the dignity and the equity that they deserve as human beings in a place that we want to be fair. And that is the reason why we're undertaking all the transformative work that we are currently progressing. This household support fund is coming back to Cabinet in order to advise and highlight the ongoing work and endeavour that we're undertaking in this vital area of support for our most impacted residents. This is the one in a number of successive household support fund grant allocations that we've received from central government. You'll all recall that this first emerged as part of the response to COVID-19 not long after the start of the pandemic back in March 2020. But significantly, this grant allocation through the household support fund regime by central government is just over double the amount that we've previously received. We've received in previous years roughly the £3 million allocation. The increase brings with it some additional requirements placed by the council. An element of the money will be used for administrative purposes, high intense provision and service area that we are mobilising in terms of the detailed conversations and support that's required to be provided to the most vulnerable and exposed low-income households. And there's also a requirement that whereas under previous household support fund regimes, there was a application process where we would identify through triangulating data and undertaking the analysis. We do an open call and promote this widely. So more and more people are at the very least alert to the availability of this household support fund. Even if they're not eligible, they can at least socialise this amongst their networks. So I just wanted to assure that this very much ties in and is aligned and is part of our wider response to poverty and inequality, issues around food security and that whole ecosystem that we've developed in collaboration with anchor partners and with voluntary community and faith sectors. And we're mobilising teams within our NUM service to help support this endeavour, and it complements all the other work that we're doing, be it through our food security agenda and the New Food Alliance, and also through our income optimisation work, where already since last May, we've unlocked some £1 million of additional income benefits for the most vulnerable households. It also meets and supports our inclusive growth, wealth building agenda, and fundamentally supports our mission to build a fairer Newham. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to invite officer colleagues to just draw attention to some of the specific detail is worthy of note and highlighting. And on that front, can I invite Vicky to say a few things? Then if need be, I can pull in Burhan. I'm just trying to move on because we've got quite a lot.
So I don't have a great deal to add. Our previous performance on government have provided guidance on how they want us to distribute this round of funding, including making some of it available for open application by residents. And the detail of that is on Appendix 2 of the paper. Our mechanisms to respond to that are set out in Appendix 1. It's important to note, actually, with reference to Appendix 2, is that people who would otherwise have no recourse to public funds are eligible for basic support from this strand of funding. Finally, just to add that we obviously want to make sure that the funding gets to people who need it, and we will be triangulating information from multiple sources to make that happen. Those go from the high tech end, which is our data dashboard, who's claiming benefit and who might be in need, through to the on the ground intelligence that we receive from working with all our partners, such as sector organisations.
Okay, fine. I've also seen Burhan online, and I just really wanted to state formally both my appreciation, not only as the portfolio lead for this area on behalf of the Cabinet and wider executive, but I have seen firsthand how Burhan and in the Al Noon service, from the moment at which the pandemic and lockdown was announced, have worked so hard, so many residents, and truly their work is a testament to the brilliance that our officers demonstrate in their support and commitment to our residents. This is probably amongst one of the most pressurising areas of the council's frontline work, not least because you're having to deal with families that literally are on the verge of destitution and are away from having their electricity cut off or not being able to feed their kids. And the exposure to that horror and that reality can be traumatic. And please be reassured that we support all of our staff team on that very exposing front line. But Burhan, I wanted to firstly thank you, and please do pass on my appreciation and gratitude to the rest of the team, and also just invite you to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your kind words. I just want to really highlight, and I think it's already been said by cabinet members and colleagues, that this is a real example of how the council works across departments and organisations. For example, we're currently working with 32 voluntary sector organisations through this approach to become distribution partners. So which gives us a real good spread across geographical spread across the borough to ensure that we are able to reach our most vulnerable residents and have access points across the borough to our most disadvantaged communities. So thank you for the opportunity.
Very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Sarah Ruiz and Councillor Carly Parkrow.
Thank you, Roxana. Just maybe two or three questions, but short questions. On the food holiday voucher provision, And that I know does include our academy trusts and our free schools, even though the government talk about maintained schools. Can I just ask a plea? This will come, if Tim could take this back to, I think it's probably Peter Gibb, that a reminder needs to go out to those schools that are not maintained of the, they really do need to get these vouchers out in a timely way. I know that there are some national academy trusts who are in the borough who actually delay this for weeks. Sometimes they don't get, the kids don't get the vouchers or the parents don't get the vouchers after the school holidays finish. So I'd just like to urge them on that. And is there going to be a comms plan for getting the message out? Because I'm aware of what we're doing and all those people who are known through our networks. My concern is actually there are probably considerable number of people who are not known to any network because they don't actually, they're not socializing out in there. And I just want to know how we are going to get the message out to those people who are not part of a group or have access to anything. And then my third question is, are we absolutely confident that our newer money have the sufficient staffing resources for this? Because I know that they are already dealing with backlogs and it's quite difficult to get an appointment with them.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to direct all of those questions to Vicky. Yeah.
So the point about Academy Trust is noted and I'll liaise with Tim on that. On comms, yes, but we will double check that and make sure we're being. And I know Burhan and the team are working very hard. The distribution of, they've managed to get this money out previously and the channels are well established. I'm confident they will be able to support this distribution.
Not at the detriment of cases that are there all the time.
Okay. Is that fine for now?
Okay.
Okay, and can I just advise through the CAF process where these papers, that's an opportunity for you to raise your concern.
I wasn't at this CAF meeting.
Yeah, but also just because this is a cabinet for decision making and any concerns that you have the opportunity to raise them with me as a portfolio lead or through our portfolio CAF meeting. Yeah. Right, are there any other questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Carlin Lee Parkway. I just had a couple of questions. I did have a question in regards to already asked. I'll leave that one alone. I do just want to understand how we're measuring impact of the work that's happening here. I actually think, along with the rest of my cabinet colleagues, this is an amazing opportunity for residents. And what we're doing is socially correct. However, and the impacts. And the other thing I wanted, back as what something Sarah said, which is part of my question was, is there an opportunity for us to use the comms piece around this? Maybe going into our surgeries, hospitals and putting maybe some posters up. Residents will visit those places. They may not be in socialized groups. They may not go to various different things. They may not even access our websites, but they may, and they more likely will be going to their doctor's surgeries and the local hospital. So I just wondered if that's an opportunity that could be looked into.
That sounds absolutely sensible and we will follow that up on the former point around impacts. There is some detail on the paper on how we I think one thing to note about this fund is an amount from the fund. So the impact is helping people. They can't feed their children, but they can't pay their bills. There is other work that we're doing through our new money, our new work, etc., which is about over a sustained period, trying to make sure that people get all the benefits that they're entitled to, trying to make sure that they're able to develop their skills and improve their employment prospects. So over time, we hope they will be in less service.
Chair, so just off the back of what you just said, Vicky, so you said about this fund is about emergency situations, and I appreciate that, and we all know that happens. But what I would just want to say here in this forum is we're often criticised as a council as we're not doing anything for anybody. But there are these amazing bits of work that's happening in the background that actually makes a difference to people when they're in hardship, when they're in an emergency situation, and when they've got no one else to turn to. So I just want to understand, I do appreciate the emergency part of it, but there is, in my opinion, some data that can be gathered in that situation. If it's just, even if it's lifestyle change or, you know, something that says, actually, if they hadn't had that, you know, the reality is they could have been, for instance, left homeless. So therefore, or they may not have had no electricity. So therefore children aren't able to study. I do appreciate that that's a little bit personal, but for those residents that are happy to share some of that data, just that opportunity to actually say, actually, we are doing this in very difficult circumstances. We keep people anonymized to show that actually there is something happening.
Thank you. I mean, paragraphs of 2.6 onward. I take your point. We do separately provide long-term on annual money to help people personal type of thing, and as I say, make sure they get all the benefits. So I agree with you that that data though doesn't illustrate things in quite the same way as case might do, and we can absolutely work with the team to with people who are comfortable have that information shared to develop those case studies. And
thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions? Was there? No, I don't think there were. Okay, so I'm just gonna draw everyone's attention to the recommendations on big page number 221 for the reasons set out, right, so 1.1, for the reasons set out in the report and its appendices, Cabinet is recommended to 1.1.1 accept the council's allocation of the household support fund of £6,678,390. 1.1.2, agree to the distribution of the household support fund of said amount, open bracket, to be spent from the 1st of April 2023 to the 31st of March 2024, close bracket, via the approach as set out in Appendix 1, 1.1.3, to authorise the corporate director of inclusive economy and housing in consultation with the lead members for inclusive economy and housing and children's social care and education. Children's social care and education, or isn't it children's social care or children's social services? It says it both. But lead members for inclusive economy and housing, children's services and education to commence and undertake rollout of the fund through our new money service to ensure delivery to residents by the 31st of March 2024. Could you just correct typos for the purposes of minutes?
Yes.
Joy. Thank you very much. Right, is that agreed, Cabinet?
Agreed.
That's agreed by Cabinet. Mike. Joy, now moving on to agenda item 11, procurement of.
10. Joyce.
10, special educational needs and disabilities and inclusion strategy. And I'm going to be inviting Councillor Joshua Garfield to introduce this paper, and then I will invite Corporate Director of Children and Young People Services, Tim Aldridge, and Vic Verma, Director of Education, to talk to some of the key lines, and then we'll open up to questions. Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Garfield, Cabinet Member for Education. Councillor Darwood and I are a year into this role now, and when we started, we pledged that improving the SEND service would be our priority. So we've developed a written statement of action, which we passed last year at Cabinet, and we've worked hard to implement it in line with the areas of improvement identified by the Joint Area Inspection in December 2021. In January, we cleared the EHCP backlog 3 months ahead of schedule, and we're on target for 80% of VHCPs to be completed within 20 weeks by September. But today, we're bringing forward our draft SEND and inclusion. Now, this strategy has been co-produced with more than 300 participants, co-production being a cornerstone of the improvements that we're making to the service and that we detailed in the action. The draft strategy sets out our vision for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, ensuring that they are supported to learn, achieve, and thrive within local settings and communities to enable them to lead happy and fulfilling adult lives. Now, this document is a draft, and we will be going to consultation with stakeholders, with the public, which will include families, education and health partners, via a series of workshops and an innovative online platform, which will be accessible to participants who are neurodiverse, using, to the best of our ability, pictures, sound, and Makaton to generate feedback from young people who have SEND themselves. So Cabinet is asked to approve this draft before we begin public consultation. But before I open for questions, I just want to talk a little bit about Mohammed. Now, Mohammed is a year 11 pupil at a local school. Mohammed was diagnosed with autism as a child, and at the time was placed in his school's dedicated provision. They called it the green room. Mohammed's father took him to school every single day, and he was taught and nurtured in the school's dedicated provision, which enabled him to stay in the school community that he and his family knew and trusted. Mohammed had an incredible memory, and his mathematic abilities were nurtured alongside his love for drawing and trains, something we public transport aficionados might appreciate. Over time, he began to spend some of his learning time in mainstream classrooms and made friends across his year group. In year 10, Mohammed's year had their work experience placements, and he was not left out. In fact, Mohammed successfully completed a 2-week placement at Green Street Tesco, where he was able to demonstrate his amiable people skills and his knack for sums. Mohammed's journey is one that we celebrate in the SEND department, and it's one that was made possible through good and provision delivered by his school, by health partners, and by this council. Mohammed's story won't be every young person's story, and nor would we expect it to be, but the principles of ensuring that every young person with SEND has the opportunity to access the placement which best meets their needs is within their community, and that they and their family co-produce with our services, not one that is forced upon them. Our 5 priorities are detailed in the report, and I imagine that we'll be taking it as read because I'm sure you've all looked at it, but we mustn't lose sight of the fact that our young people are at the centre of this strategy and that this is by them and for them. And that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you all about Mohammed and get home that idea that this is about people accessing the very best provision that we can offer and ensuring that they all have that chance to access it close to home, within their community, and that they have a role in co-producing it with those services. So I've got Tim Aldridge, who is Corporate Director for Children's Services, and Vic Verber, Director of Education, here with me. And between us, we're very happy to take any number of questions from Cabinet colleagues.
Tim.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as Sir Garfield has said in his introduction, you asked there is free for this draft special educational needs and strategy to go out to formal consultation. Just to note, the draft strategy that you see for you today is the result of some significant consultation processes already. That's built on the foundation of a mission that took place across last year, and also builds on the Children and Young and Charter, Young People's Charter that were developed last year also. The strategy sets out 5 priority areas, as you've heard already, including early identification and intervention, better use of partnership data and intelligence, ensuring that there's high quality specialist support available where required, ensuring that children and young people are prepared for adulthood, and a real commitment to co-production. So there have been a number of workshops that throughout the spring term with over 1,000 impacts. in total. And there's also a co-produced outcomes framework to help us monitor and measure impact and programs. So this is part of a wider piece of improvement work across services for special educational disability, and it's done in conjunction with, in particular, colleagues in health, and also working with student leaders as well. And it responds to the need for us to develop a system that addresses issues of sustainability, ensures effective co-production, and ensures that our range of education settings are as inclusive as possible. And the aim of this strategy is really to gain greater coherence and ensure that we are prioritising the right areas in the next period of time. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vic.
Thank you. Nothing to add from me at this point, but happy to answer questions as they come.
All right, super. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to be opening up to some questions. Councillor Neil Wilson.
Very briefly, Chair, the recommendation for it is that we note that the council and the NHS North East London Integrated Care Board will be responsible for the delivery of the strategy once it's approved through the Newham SEND Executive Board. Just to clarify that, you know, in the governance arrangements, quite rightly, I don't think when we're at this stage of a consultation that we need to have a complicated governance structure, but just to get reassurance from the relevant officers that will be coming. Obviously, there's a statutory responsibility for it to report to the Health and Wellbeing Board, but that we can actually maintain links and models of good practice from all the other boroughs within the North East London footprint. That's my first one. And I speak as the Vice Chair of the Integrated Care Partnership of that body. Secondly, officers won't be surprised because since I've been on this council, I've always been arguing about transition. The current legislation for the relevant age cohort goes up to 25, and is there reference with the transition into young people and adults and higher education as well as training opportunities. And finally, and I think I mentioned this in other places, we must, I think, consider, though this is my opinion as a governor, the role of governing bodies, because governing bodies are the strategic vision as well as school leaders. So I just think we need to cross-reference to put that on record that governing bodies, I'd rather they talked about some of the other things that they tend to get weighed down in terms of their operations. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to bring in Councillor Joshua Garfield to respond to that question first, then I'll invite Vic and then Tim.
You're quite right, Councillor Wilson, the role that the governing boards play in schools to ensure that they are being inclusive as they can, the children with SEND, and ensuring that they've got the right relationship with stakeholders, including the council and health partners for that service delivery, is crucial. And we don't, it's not that governing boards are not important to us for the reason they haven't been highlighted in the previous comments. It's more that the wider education strategy, which is currently up for consultation and is yet to be brought before Cabinet, will place greater emphasis on the role of governing boards and ensuring that all school provision and services is monitored by them, and the responsibilities they hold, not just to hold the leadership team to account in schools, to also act as the checks and balances required for families who may have complaints about services either offered or lack thereof at the school. Happy to bring in Tim on the previous questions and points about the governance of the NHS Integrated Care Board.
Thank you, Councillor Garfield. Yes, no, in terms of the North East London health governance, just to say, Councillor Wilson, as you already referenced, this board, the executive representatives from NEL at office as well, and they've been involved in developing this strategy. But also of note, East London Directors of Children's Services have been raising the need for North East London health governance to pay attention to the new SEND framework and the requirements of the SEND and vision improvement plan. And there is a paper being developed by the East London DCS group that will go to the Babies, Children and Young People NEL group, but also the Executive Leadership Board of
Good.
Okay, Vic, is there anything that you wanted to add?
I think just to respond to the question regarding transitions and preparation for adulthood. So priority 4 is a standalone priority dedicated to the work that we need to do around preparing our children into adulthood, both in terms of their transition, if they have a children's social worker and require support from adult social care, but also thinking about the broader offer in post-16 colleges, the vocational offer, but also looking at employment opportunities as well. And that's all captured in that priority 4 as a key focus within that strategy.
Thank you very much. Is that fine?
Yeah,
I'm really conscious of time. Is it uber nuclear critical? Is it uber nuclear critical?
No, it's not. None of those ever.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for introducing the report. And I think listening to what you said, but actually bringing it actually into the room and explaining the journey of a young person is really important. And I just wanted to add a couple of things and ask a question. Code of Practice came out in 2014. It kind of landed on the local authority with no real way of understanding what that meant, but it didn't come with these pocketfuls of money. It sounded like we had lots and lots of things coming, but nothing ever came. And so actually reading the strategy and understanding where we're at from where we've been, we've come a long way. And I thank you and the team for that. I do just want to understand, is there an opportunity within this strategy going forward? So we talked about Mohammed and the journey of Mohammed. Is there any opportunity to maybe monitor the journey of young people from a young age, from first coming into the pathway of SEND up to hopefully transition into 25? Is there an opportunity to maybe do that piece of work to really understand right here, right now, what it is that this document is going to do for the lives of these young people in our borough, of which they love and want to be part of? Is there an opportunity for that? And if there is, would love to see how that can be intertwined into, and I appreciate this document is going to be a moving document and it will change according to certain criteria of law. But I just want to understand, how can we make it alive to the residents in which it involves?
Really appreciate your comments, Councillor Lee Parkway. I think priorities 1 and 2. So priority 1 is strengthening early identification and early intervention pathways, and priority 2 is about how we use data and to build those robust partnerships and intelligence to enable the joint commissioning services. And our outcomes framework will be looking at the journey of a child as they come through the service, receive their EHCP, and then go on to have their regular communication with those health partners, their school, and those workshops that ensure that the service they're receiving is of quality. Hence, the investment we secured last year to employ quality assurance lead. We'll be looking at that. And those 2 priorities allow that to become a lot easier for the authority, because the piece of work you described, when the Code of Practice landed in 2014, would have been a humongous undertaking, a humongous task, trying to identify a young person and get that entire journey from them. It would have drained resources from elsewhere. But with the improved use of data and the fact that we are strengthening early diagnoses and early interventions from health partners, means that we can monitor a young person's journey far more easily using that intelligent software and the data that we're collecting. So I think it will be easier. And I'm not to be too presumptuous, Tim and Vit, but I'm quite confident in saying that that's something we'll be able to produce in coming years as a department, because we're starting from this strategy with that information and with those early diagnoses. But happy to bring you in, Tim.
Thank you, Councillor Garfield. Yes, I think as Councillor Garfield said, one of the key aims is to use information intelligence data effectively, and the journey and the experiences of individual children and young people, but also the impact that the services and the resources and hence that's why we have an outcomes framework in place as part of this strategy. There's also much on health insurance, so really looking at the experience of children and families, carers, but also want to use that data to really forecast future demands, make sure we've got sufficient steps in place to be prepared for the demand in the future. You'll be aware that this strategy is one element of a much broader piece of work. The aim is to report regularly progress, and we will be returning to the Cabinet, I expect, in the autumn to update on plans to further strengthen how we use data and the systems that we employ to use data to understand impact. And finally, it may well be pertinent, should Cabinet require it, to provide a midpoint review partway through the strategy to update on.
Thank you. Yeah, is that fine? Okay, I'm going to be moving on to the recommendations on page. Oh, sorry, go on.
Just to come back finally, Chair, if I may. Two things to note for the minutes. One, following advice from Dem Service and the Mayor's office, there is an amended lead members introduction with Dem Services that will be retrospectively published, but just to note that for the minutes. And secondly, I believe this may be Tim Aldridge's last Cabinet presenting a paper, and just wanted to thank him for his steadfast commitment and service to the borough as Corporate Director for Children's Services for the last few years, especially given the incredible outcome of our Ofsted inspection led by he and Councillor Ruiz, which was a milestone for the borough, and congratulate him on his new position as he joins Camden during the summer, and thank him formally from Cabinet for his service.
Hear, hear.
Okay, now move on. Great. Recommendations. Cabinet is asked to 2.1 agree that the draft sending Appendix 1 progresses to statutory public consultation. 2.2 note that the engagement undertaken with local stakeholders in the co-design of the strategy, and that the final version of the strategy returned to Cabinet for formal approval following public consultation. 2.3 note that the Council on the NHS North East London ICB will be responsible for the delivery of the strategy once approved by Cabinet through the Newham Send Executive Board. Right, is that agreed?
Great, Chair.
Noted. And that's agreed, voted by Cabinet and myself. Thank you very much. Now we're moving on to procurement of supply, support, installation and maintenance of ANPR cameras and associated technology. Over to Councillor Amaverdi or Amaverdi.
It's me.
And then, oh, is it you? I thought it was Amaverdi. Oh, I am so sorry. So there's going to be a couple of questions from Councillor Susan Masters.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Over to you. Sorry.
Well, this a useful setup in, so I suspect some of the questions we might get. So those who aren't watching in, Councillor James Asser, Cabinet Member for Environment, Sustainable Transport and Deputy Mayor. So this is a procurement paper, but and so it sounds quite dry, but within that is quite a lot of important stuff, because this is about procurement of a new round of ANPR cameras that we use on our roads, and so that's automatic number plate recognition. To implement on a number of different policies. So these are the cameras we use on our low traffic neighbourhoods, on our healthy school streets, and on our road safety measures. So managing how people are using the roads and stopping people doing illegal left turns and driving the wrong way down one-way streets. This is all hugely important stuff in terms of making sure we can deliver on those manifesto commitments. So we have a commitment around rolling out healthy school streets to every school that we can manage to do that. We've chosen to do that through camera enforcement rather than blocking the roads for practical reasons. What we've seen in the places where they've been implemented is a huge change in the way schools are operating and the way children come out of school. And there's some figures within the paper on the impact that's had on our air quality too. This also allows us to work with the emergency services where they need access to certain roads when we implement sort of low traffic neighbourhoods. Obviously, in places we like to close those off and make them quieter roads, but in some cases we buses and emergency services need access. So we do that through camera enforcement. But also we've used this very heavily in terms of our moving traffic conventions. That's stopping people driving illegally, doing illegal manoeuvres that create a huge amount of danger to anyone using the road, walking, cycling, travelling by mobility scooter or wheelchair, or driving themselves, because vehicles are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. It presents huge danger. We've mentioned in the opening report here, this also works towards working with the Mayor of London on delivering his Vision Zero for nobody killed or seriously injured on our roads within the next 20 years, and being able to ensure that roads are safe. And when we started doing this program, we didn't have a huge number of these cameras, but when we started doing this, what we found was a lot of people, particularly around schools, in classes attached to our places of worship, where there's often children going in, had real problems, and parents were concerned about the safety of their children. So this has made a huge impact on that. But also point out to people in 2.2, you'll also see the technology around cameras has hugely moved on. I think people often think they just sort of point down the road. We can do a number of things with them. So monitoring another number of things and getting data allows us to target where we're implementing things, and making sure that we're putting the right resources into the right areas is hugely important. So the technology is moving on. That's allowing us to do a range of things. So I'll leave my intro there. I have director in the room. I've got our head of parking and traffic on screen, and Samantha, who is our CCTV and camera guru, I'm going to describe her as. So if anyone wants to add anything at that point, or whether I've covered it all.
Okay, officer colleagues, any particular comments of note required at this stage?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing from me. I think Councillor Assett's given a really comprehensive introduction. The only thing I would emphasise is that from a highways transport and parking perspective, objectives and very important to us, as well as working out those conventions and making sure we're enforcing those. There are a lot of other associated benefits in terms of air quality improvement and road safety improvement as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to open up to questions from colleagues, and I know that Councillor Susan Masters has a question or a couple of questions. Let me take yours first, and then I'll come to Councillor John Whitworth and then Councillor Rohit Dasgupta. Over to you.
Really quick questions. Firstly, is there a crime? Can there be a crime application to these cameras? Because I know residents are really keen on having more messages like antisocial behaviour and fly tipping. And secondly, the report wasn't clear. Is this an outsourcing of a service that is probably in-house, or is it a service that is already out of house?
I'm going to pass those, because it's getting into technical stuff, I'm going to pass over to officers, because certainly on things around CCTV, there's obviously lots of strict regulation of what you can use cameras for, and I suspect Samantha will be able to really update us on that. And then if I can, why don't we pick up on the procurement as well?
I'll stop.
Sorry,
Okay, I'm going to bring in Sarah first, and then Sarah, you've got 1 minute, and then I will bring in Sam for any further comments for no more than 1 minute.
Okay, the first question was around whether the cameras can be used for multiple uses like crime allocation. Unfortunately, they can't. They are, they're not direct feed cameras, they are ANPR cameras, which are working on an algorithm that are looking for particular characteristics like a number plate to pick them up. There is different legislation around RIPA requirements for live feed cameras and requires completely different legislation. So unfortunately, they only pick up parking offences. The second one was with regards outsourcing. No, this isn't outsourcing, it's just the technology we're purchasing. All the cameras are then, all contraventions are then viewed by London Borough of Newham officers, and that is then reviewed through our standard process.
Okay, Sam?
Yeah, so am I on mute? Okay. So to add to what Sarah said in terms of can the cameras be used for anything else but moving traffic contraventions, whilst we can't use them for public space and surveillance in terms of specifically looking at members of the public, if the police do request footage from the camera in terms of if there's a murder or a hit and run, etc., they do have to request a declaration, and we can, if we have the footage, release it to them that way. But there is a procedure that we have to follow in order to do that. So we document that the police are requesting that information. But that's the only time that it will be released.
Right, fine. Is that fine? Yeah, for now. Anything else? Oh, okay, Councillor John Whitworth and then Councillor Rohit Descriptor.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I very much welcome this contract, which will bring us a large number of cameras capable of producing high quality data on the volume, speed, and the pollution of the air. And on this note, before I answer the question, I would like to highlight the table shown on page 380, which shows data from phase 2 air quality results of 2021. Which shows the main message here is, of course, that the health school trees do work. It shows very significant reductions in nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter 2.5. Significant reductions in all schools and very large ones. So I think this is the message that the health schools are effective.
Okay, is there a question?
My question is the procurement of the cameras, 200 over 4 years. I just wondered about the rhythm of the acquisition. The contracts are effective from December. Are we going to get a number in December, or will that be further back over the 4-year period? What is the sort of rollout of the batches that we're going to require?
Okay, is that an officer? Right, Jamie Cook, quick, less than 1 minute.
Rollout will be dictated on need in terms of what particular sites we've got going live at particular times. If we're helping school student sites we need them at that time, or a low traffic neighbourhood, or perhaps because we've identified the need to enforce some traffic regulation, be that yellow box reduction. That very much on the basis of that.
Okay, is that satisfactory for now?
Do you expect to require some immediate need from shortly after December, or is that not?
So we have got the health and school student sites that are going live soon. Sam, am I correct in thinking we're going to be using the new cameras on the new phase?
We're hoping to do the next phase 4 for schools towards the end of the year, possibly the beginning of the next year, but we're aiming for the end of the year. And there are LTNs going in a couple of weeks as well, and MTCs.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to add? Because I really want to close off this question, not because I don't think it's a valid, pertinent one, but it's an operational issue, and this is something that can be picked up outside of this formal meeting of Cabinet, which is about decision making. Yeah.
Only to just reiterate that point about the table in 3.3 on the school streets having a direct impact in terms of improving air quality, which is what we made a promise to achieve. So.
I should just add, there is a analysis and drawdown of the data that then inputs into the annual air quality report that then is subject to scrutiny through the formal scrutiny function and through the interrogation by the portfolio team, and it will come to a CAF at the appropriate point. Right, Councillor Rohit Dasgupta.
I think some of my question was asked by Councillor.
Okay, super. Are there any more questions? Oh, right, brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone, for your really valuable contributions. Recommendations as set out on big page number 278. 2.1, for the reasons set out in the report, Cabinet recommended to agree. 2.1.1, procurement for the supply, installation, support and maintenance of automatic number plate recognition ANPR cameras through the Eastern Shires Procurement Organisation, open bracket ESPO, close bracket framework 6 to 8, open bracket 8, close bracket. To delegate authority to the Director of Environment and Sustainable Transport in consultation with the lead member for Environment, Highways and Sustainable Transport to award and enter into the contract following the relevant procurement exercise, and 1.3 to delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Environment and Sustainable Transport to authorise the purchase of additional CCTV cameras throughout the life of the contract. Right, is that agreed, Cabinet members?
Agreed, Chair.
Brilliant, that's agreed by Cabinet and myself. Let's move on to agenda item 12. This is the executive response to the State of the Borough Review Scrutiny Report, and I'm going to be inviting Councillor Armaz Verdi to introduce the paper, and then I'll subsequently invite Lead Officer Gary Connors to talk to some particular points, notes, and then, if required, Jamie Cook.
Thank you.
Right, over to you.
Yeah, just things. The paper sets out an update on the Cabinet response to the State of the Borough Review Scrutiny Report received in September. The Council administration made a commitment to ensure that residents all feel safe in the day and night, which includes women, the younger population, and aging well population, which they don't feel at harm when they are using our streets, parks, and open spaces. It's really important as a council, we're working as a cross directorate and as a one council, and examples of this, coming to, so being quite proactive, working with health and adult, housing, community wealth building, youth empowerment, environment, to tackle some of these issues. The background of this starts from 3.1, where there was 12 recommendations by the Crime and ASB Scrutiny Commission, and obviously the executive response start from 4.1 for you to cross-reference. If there's anything else that Gary and Jamie would like to add, I'd like to welcome them in.
Yep, Gary.
Very briefly, the only thing I would say is this, as you'll probably see from a number of the key topics and questions that were asked, this is a fully cross council response. We got response from colleagues in a number of key areas, right across children's, adults, housing, colleagues, and community safety. I guess the only other thing I would say, we have responses back on specific questions to the police on there, and I suppose the additional I would add responses back to the police response, certainly in item 12, is there is currently work going on right across London about how the turnaround plan is embedded on the back of the case review. There's a number of MOPAC and London Mayor driven meetings coming up on that as well. So that again, it's just to point out this across these are areas of work that are ongoing across the next couple of years.
Okay, anything else, Jamie Cook? Right, fine. May I have any incisive, particular, precise questions from the executive on this executive response that we're all collectively behind? Okay, and then just to advise in terms of the process thereafter, once we've agreed the recommendations, process of being presented through writing to the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny as part of the formality. We'll be looking at relevant scrutiny officers in collaboration with officers in the Mayor's office to help aid that in a proficient and timely way. And I just wanted to thank everyone, officer side and member side, involved in the consideration of the executive response and input, including Councillor Carleen Lee Parkway, who occupy this portfolio previously. And I also want to formally convey my apologies, and it was unintended that this executive response to the state of the report has come so late. It shouldn't have happened. And we are picking up with the organisation to ensure that this doesn't happen again. So colleagues, can I just draw everyone's attention to big page number 290, recommendations 2.1, that the Cabinet note and approve the response as to the progress which has been made by officers in relation to the service areas which have been highlighted in the scrutiny recommendations made to Cabinet in September 2022. Is that agreed, colleagues?
Agreed.
That's agreed, Joy. And now we're moving to what I think is the final paper, but please don't all rush away afterwards, because I've got to go through formally agenda items 14, 15 and 16 for noting and agreeing on the exclusion of the press. Right, agenda item 13, I want to welcome formally again Councillor Susan Masters, who's going to be presenting the scrutiny report on maternity care and health inequalities. And thereafter, once she has concluded, I'm going to be inviting Councillor Neil Wilson in light of his role as Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Social Care to provide a formal interim response. And then, as per the protocol and the process, we will further consider and come back to a Cabinet, having published the formal executive response approval. And just by way of emphasis to officers present and responsible for the efficient progress of this element of the executive and scrutiny's work, that it needs to be done within the time frame that's required and outlined in the protocols that we've approved in July 2021 at full council. Over to you, Councillor Susan Masters. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Mayor and Cabinet, I'm proud to introduce Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny's report into maternity care and health inequalities. Since the early 90s, it's been clear that different ethnicities have very different outcomes. Nationally, if you're Black, you're 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than if you're white. If you are Asian, the odds are almost twice as high. This is totally unacceptable. How can it be that decades on from first being raised, despite many task forces and NHS initiatives, that such inequality persists? This report is the end of a journey that started in October of last year. Scrutiny has looked at maternity services in the past, but only ever from the point of view of addressing service issues raised by the CQC regarding the maternity unit at the University Hospital. The report I've tabled today takes a very different approach. It applies a marmot lens to maternity outcomes, considering the impact of factors such as personal wealth, education, environment and ethnicity, rather than merely examining clinical services in isolation. I've already referenced the national picture, but in Newham, the disparities are particularly acute, with the highest level of stillbirths to women of Black or Asian or other origin compared to white mothers, and highest average proportion of women giving birth to babies of low birth weight in North East London. Women also tend to present later in their pregnancy and are more likely to have need for access to A&E during this period. While higher levels of obesity, hypertension and risk of type 2 or gestational diabetes might explain some of these disparities, all issues that can be supported if identified from the start, this is not the whole story. Our report examines some of the wider issues, but equally accepts that there are data limitations that also require addressing. It's a hefty tome, but much of it documents the vast amount of research going on and support available locally. Rather than replicate that, we chose to focus on the work. The timeliness of our report is illustrated by the fact it brings a new dimension The report was brought in mid-April, both by the London Assembly Health Committee, looking at maternity inequalities issues from a London perspective, and at a national level by the Parliamentary Women Inequalities Committee, led by the Right Honourable Caroline Noakes MP. Our recommendations, as you can see, focus on a number of areas we found key: improving the quality of data, improving the clarity of local targets and how we'll track progress, the ongoing collation of experiences of service by new mothers, improved partnership working between housing, public health, our new money and the NHS, ring-fence funds in the voluntary sector, an improved sign-up process for antenatal potential issues are flagged from the off, a focus on ensuring consistency of care, expressed in desire for reflection on the current viability of the Barking Birth Centre for New and Women, given its impact on local staff allocations, and greater scrutiny of overseas charging, a significant number of women wrongly charged for maternity services, and the impact this is bound to have both on the experience of maternity and on the likelihood of people from marginalised communities seeking out such care. There had been concern about our committee looking at the wider system in terms of its lack of power to bring about change, but I'm pleased to report that in this last area, our scrutiny has already had a positive impact. The issue of the hostile environment in the NHS is akin to the rush scandal. As a result of a special pilot held in our local maternity unit, but Barts Health, the trust that oversees the hospital, alongside Royal London, Mile End, Woods Cross and St Thomas, invoiced 739 women for costs of maternity care in 2018 to 19, and yet just under half actually turned out to be eligible for free care. Our scrutiny meeting introduced the hospital to maternity action. The group had worked with other trusts to try and limit the negative impact of charging. This was an issue we felt it important to address, but simultaneously we were aware that our hospital is governed by centralised NHS regulations, and that to require them to do anything that brought them into conflict with these, back to ultra vires, would be a waste of time. It's testimony to the leadership of the hospital and Barts Health that they agreed to an additional meeting attended by myself as chair, Councillor Neil Wilson as cabinet lead, which brought together members of maternity action with a number of the leadership team from the hospital and Barts Health to come up for wording for recommendations that achieve the aims of addressing the 4 issues raised without breaching the regulation. When it came to taking the report, there were equally questions over whether it needed to go to cabinet. However, in addition to obtaining an executive response, I feel it's an important test case. This report is the first health and adult social care security report we've published since the creation of our North East London integrated care system. In the light of this new stakeholder partnership, the recommendations raise questions around sources of funding. When we recommend ring-fence funding for VCS initiatives in this field, should the money be found from our public health budget or the NHS new and place-based system? And what is the mechanism by which this is done? To conclude, we'd like to thank the many stakeholders who contributed to this report, which has already won praise from Redbridge and Hackney. And ask that we receive an executive response within the 2 months. And I'm pleased that the Mayor has highlighted the importance. I'm happy to answer any questions right.
Thank you very much. I'm going to invite Councillor Neil Wilson to provide an interim response, and please feel free if you've got any specific you also want to ask.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and welcome the report, and also welcome the reference, and grateful to the Commission, but particularly the Chair, to have an open dialogue with Barts Health around that rather, contentious from the Department of Health and Social Care's perspective, to actually have a team from Maternity Action to develop the recommendations 6 and 7 in a way that make them workable, but also in the context of sometimes horrific sort of inequalities already been highlighted nationally for particularly mothers and babies from African, Caribbean and Asian heritage communities. So welcome that. Also welcome the fact that, as I think the chair of the Relevant Scrutiny Commission highlighted, we're in a new landscape where we are arguing because of increased population and resource inequalities that are historical, that we actually make certain that whether the discussion around the resourcing for improved services in this very important regard of the newer mental health services would be tackled from a integrated care partnership board, the integrated care partnership having funding, which is already top-down sort of legislation to that. So I welcome that, but also just also in terms of the recommendation, for instance, if I just pick on nutrition, because quite clearly there's a link between antenatal and postnatal and the actual nurturing of children who are born and the mothers in pregnancy and their relevant food intake. There are closer partnerships, for instance, between our Newham Food Alliance, children's centres and the public health services. So I think this is a wide-ranging report, and I think the chair and all the commission are to be congratulated on how patient they were. And you can see from the actual pages going right up to page 516 or 15 or something of our bundle. It's a very thorough piece of work, and I welcome the opportunity for us to come back with a more detailed response, which I know will be consistent with how we want to work as one council, not just about the Newham Food Alliance, children's centres, but also how we might engage more constructively in terms of making this a report that then has had some review with milestones, particularly bearing in mind the voluntary and community sector groups that I think the chair alluded to as well, because they're a crucial partner to reassure women who are sometimes at a very vulnerable and clearly sometimes very desperate position regarding their access to what we should consider to be the National Health Service that should be available and open access to all. So I welcome this, and I look forward to coming back with our executive response.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions, colleagues? No, I've got one question, Councillor Zulfikar Ali, and it's that this is a question to Councillor Susan Masters.
It's actually a clarification in terms of the recommendation, because this.
Okay, fine. If you want to ask clarification.
Thank you. It's more to Councillor Wilson, really, because this is obviously what.
Sorry.
No.
Okay, I'll leave it there.
The paper from scrutiny, and are there any points of clarity that you require from the chair of scrutiny?
Not on that.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you very much. I've got Councillor John Whitworth.
Yes, very fine, comprehensive study of the problems involved and suggestions for improvements in Newham. I have got one query though. There's a lot of explanations for the reasons why white women are at less, white mothers are at less risk of death during pregnancy than the members of other ethnic groups. But yet there is a difference in mortality between the black women, which is actually twice as high as that for the Asian women. Now, I wonder, there doesn't seem to be much on really reason for this difference, and I wondered if you went into that and what were the quality of statistics for this issue?
I think this touches upon our recommendation around data. The actual, although we were provided with a lot of data, the actual data around ethnicity doesn't really sort of do a good enough job to sort of break down and illuminate what the issues are here. So that was one of our recommendations, that data sort of be improved so that those issues be sort of clarified.
Is that fine? Okay, are there any other questions, colleagues? Okay, cool. So I am going to just draw everyone's attention to the recommendation on big page number 305, which is that the scrutiny report anti-care and health inequality has been noted and that an executive response to the scrutiny recommendations will be prepared for consideration by the cabinet.
Chair. Sorry, my apology. That's the point I was trying to make earlier, that shouldn't that be in consultation with the NHS partners? Because clearly, we're working with them, and that's where a lot of information will be coming back from.
Okay, so are you suggesting that the cover report
Yeah, executive response,
by scrutiny
yeah, the executive response to scrutiny recommendation
isn't
paid in consultation with the NHS partners for cabinet consideration?
Well, I took that as read, actually, Chair, that the executive report that I would be leading on would be in consultation with our relevant partners anyway, so.
Yeah, so it's much of a muchness, and I mean, any draft report that we will be considering will no doubt specify that the response has been drafted following discussions
With
portfolio lead and the
arts.
to have had with partners, so it's comprehensive. And where needed, the report will specify which sits within the domain of influence and power and control of the council, and which sits within the wider health system. And then obviously and undoubtedly there'd be reference to the role of the Health and Wellbeing Board in monitoring and tracking, and also through the North East London integrated care system, footprint ecosystem regime, etc., and those will be picked up. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, right. So do we all agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
All agreed, Joy, by all of us. So colleagues even, I'm going to just thank you very much, Councillor Susan Masters, by the way. I'm going to just draw attention to agenda item 14, where I just wanted to formally note we would have been willing to exclude the press and public. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah.
And then want to agenda item 15, which is the exempt appendices, agenda item 6, Custom House and Canning Town regeneration acquisitions and appropriation to planning, pages 515 to 626. And obviously we've made the decision, but I just want to make sure that we cover off that we've noted and our decision making was informed by agenda item 15. Is that agreed?
Noted.
And then 16 is similarly exempt appendices for agenda item Head Street acquisition, page 67 to 698. Is that agreed to note?
Agreed.
Okay, cool. And if you do have hard copy versions of these papers, can you please make sure you do not leave line behind and hand them back by the clerk to committee. And on that note, I am ahead of time by 10 minutes.
I guess.
Right, we are going to conclude this very useful, informative and lengthy cabinet meeting. Enjoy the rest of your days, everyone, and I shall see you the other side of the victory parade.
Or celebrating awards.
Three, isn't it?
I feel like